I was actually on a tour opening up for Brother Ali, and we were in what was supposed to be a 2 week gap between legs of the tour,
Hmm.
and or 3 week. In the middle of the second week, it just started to look like we weren't going to be able to continue. Um, so it was not a great place to suddenly be out of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how does it feel to be, releasing music right now?
I'm excited for people to hear because I worked really hard on it. It's also extremely personal, so it seems I often wonder if these times are suited for work that is this personal.
Mhm.
Um, but also, there's nothing I can do about it at this point. So,
Mhm. Well, congratulations on the new album, Anime, Trauma, and Divorce, which comes out October 16th, which is a couple of days. It's on Friday. So, can you tell us, a little bit about the album and what it's reflective of for you?
it's reflective of real life circumstances in my life, some of which have been a through line throughout my entire life. But um, I just had kind of hit a series of circumstances that kind of made it where I couldn't, if I was making some music, I couldn't make music about like the world at large. I had to kind of deal with what I was actually feeling and going through. Um, so these songs are written kind of differently than how I usually write stuff.
Yeah.
And because I was exploring some pretty difficult emotional territory, um, it gets very heavy sometimes.
Mm.
Um, but even within that, I think that I find some ways to bring a little light to it.
Mm.
And then I think I'm really especially proud of the music on this album.
Mm.
So the beats that I worked with, and then working with Jack Knife Lee as a
Yeah.
producer, he really um, gave it a depth
Yeah.
that I think really suits the kind of places I go on it lyrically.
Yeah, and touching on the sound, how did you guys sort of play around with it? Because when I listen to it, lots of the songs have that sort of dark dystopian undertone going on in the background, but then that's also played with those lighter moments, like you say, like on Bucciarati, where it's sort of dancey and jazzier. So how did you guys kind of play with that balance?
Um, so we started with instrumentals from a few different sources, and I wrote songs to these, and we brought them in, and what Jackknife would do is kind of completely break them down and kind of isolate some elements of them, and we'd kind of form what the spirit of the song was going to be,
Mm.
and then he added a lot. Like he would
Mm.
add instruments that he felt like were you know filling in frequencies, and we played with different arrangements, and sometimes changed the chord progressions on things like while we were developing songs. So it was a process of kind of seeing what we had
Mm.
and allowing him to break it all down and put it all back together.
Yeah.
And he's such a pro that just the speed of him, like
Yeah.
I could see him get an idea and execute it, and like if I loved it, he could go harder with it. If I didn't love it, he'd walk it back and try something different. It was just really a great process.
Yeah. And have you guys worked together before?
We had only worked together on one song
Yeah.
before working together on this album. We did a song on his album, and
Uh-huh.
then but I really enjoyed that
Yeah.
process because I haven't in my career worked with a lot of producers in the traditional sense. I've worked with a lot of people who are excellent at making beats and then developing songs, but
Mm.
I never really worked with a producer who is so good at developing an entire project.
Yeah, it's, speaking of those lighter moments, I think on the record it definitely comes from, the influence of anime that you've put in there. Can you tell us a little bit about your love for anime and why it resonates with you and how it's influenced this album.
Um, so I think my first exposure to anime, I guess my first exposure to anime proper would have been Dragon Ball in the
Mm.
90s. Um, and what always struck me all throughout my life is how much, um, like in a black American ghetto,
Mm.
um, anime resonates with so many people. And I think, and when I was starting to make this album, I was thinking about that and thinking about the power of the power fantasy. Like that's specifically the genre of anime that really does well in America. Dragon Ball and Naruto and Bleach, where a character starts off um, weak, starts off kind of frail, oftentimes, and over the course of a show, they engage in battle after battle and they build up strength. And I think it's very relatable for
Mm.
people who find themselves in circumstances that feel beyond their control. Um, so I always was attracted to the power fantasy. Um, and I'd noticed while I was going through some of the stuff that I was going through that I was especially dialing into anime as a form of escapism.
Mm.
Um, and so I was exploring that as well, trying to confront how I'm actually feeling and also confronting the different ways I try to cope and process feelings. And one of my unhealthy mechanisms sometimes is a compulsion to dissociate and just dive into stuff like anime.
And then how did you find the process of, taking something that's always been sort of that escapism that you talk about, that sort of private, isolated tool in your life, to then writing songs about it and sharing it with people?
I've definitely had to pick and choose when and how I do that
Mm.
because I didn't want it to be taken as some ode to anime. Um, I didn't want it to be seen as me pandering to a specific audience. Um, so what I tried to do for the most part was think about anime characters and anime references as symbols
Mm.
and try to invoke those where I thought they'd be powerful on the project rather than say, this is a song about Dragon Ball.
Mm.
I would incorporate some Dragon Ball imagery into a song that's about me and what I was dealing with.
And like your previous records where you've weaved in your skill and background as a comic, how does that sort of comedic tint play out on this new record especially?
It's kind of always been present, and I
Mm.
think that again, it's another one of my long-standing coping mechanisms is to
Mm.
take a really dark situation and try to make a joke out of it. And I think like that's how you know at the end of the day that this project is authentic to me
Mm.
because no matter how heavy it gets, I have to find some way to make it into something that's entertaining for me. And
Mm.
that's usually by taking some real aspect of a situation and making it into some absurd thing.
Mm.
That's the sort of thing that pleases me.
Mhm. And from what you've said, you've sort of mentioned that this album has been a coping process for you, and you've lent on those tools that you go to for escapism and help, like anime or comedy, to sort of try and find light in dark situations. I'm wondering if this album, has helped you in the end process through, that difficult time and difficult emotions that you were going through.
I think it's helped me to say out loud some of the things that I'm feeling and say them directly because I think in my discography, there's a lot of times I was attempting to do that and kind of
Mm.
ended up just talking around stuff rather than saying it. So I
Mm.
do think that there has been, I have seen the power of actually confronting, saying, and processing
Mm.
the feelings.
Mm.
I think in the process of processing, it helps to actually say
Mm.
what it is that I'm feeling.
And this is your first album in 3 years, and and your most personal. So how do you see this one, you know, fitting in and evolving from what you've previously done?
It's gonna mark some sort of turning point.
Mm.
I think that it's been easy to assume that I would kind of always be aiming outward. Like I typically always aim
Mm.
at society and always try to pull at a thread of something in the human condition at
Mm.
large.
Mm.
Um, where this one I think is the first one that's really starkly autobiographical.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I think in that way it will stand apart, and I think that musically it has fully realized some of the ideas I've wanted to
Yeah.
um, that I wanted to try, that I wanted to execute my entire career.
Yeah.
But working with somebody like Jackknife, I really think I'm actually hearing the things that I want to hear.
Yeah, for sure. When did you and Jack Knight finish this album?
Ooh,
Did a while ago.
yeah, I want to say it was like January.
Right, right. So before this all hit, and then weirdly, you're releasing the album now, and that, you know, intense frustration that's so prevalent in some of these tracks is kind of suited and relatable to this disastrous climate that we're in. So where do you see this album translating to what's happening now?
I'm hearing that this will be a good time for that. I
Yeah.
mean, but again, that's the part that makes me, if I have any hesitance, it's that like there's so much going on in the
Yeah.
world for people that have real stakes for them. People losing their jobs,
Yeah.
people losing family members, people getting
Mhm.
sick themselves. There's a lot happening, and so there's this hesitance I have to like put out this thing where I'm talking about myself. Um, I have heard from people that um, there's a lot that people can relate to in terms of hard feelings right now, and so in that sense, it might be a good time.
I mean, it's October and I'm tired. If ever there was a line to sum up how pretty much most of us around the world are feeling right now, I think that would be it.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
that line.
that was a happy accident. I think I'm glad that one was able to work out
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah. So is there a you know, a track that you are most proud of on this one?
Um, I really like Death Parade a lot.
Hmm.
I really like Bucciarati a lot. I think those two are the ones because typically I go through um, I have my own kind of weird relationship cycle when it comes to songs on an album, and so like those are the two I'm like super feeling right now. But
Yeah.
it has been different, and it will probably be different again.
And also those are the two that you've released, right? So you probably had, you know, a little bit of feedback on them.
Well, I'm as of today because yeah, I just started to really put out Death Parade stuff today,
Yeah.
so I'm getting good
Yeah.
feedback on it in real time.
Oh, super cool. And tell me about the music video that you made for Bucciarati.
Um, Interestingly enough,
Yeah.
that started
Mhm.
as a I wanted what I wanted to do was remake the Call Me Al video from Paul Simon.
Yeah.
Um, and the reason I wanted to remake that video is because that video is all about Chevy Chase doing Paul Simon's lyrics, like lip syncing them when Paul Simon wants to perform them himself. And the fact that Carrie Foe, who sings the hook and
Mm.
has a verse on the song, couldn't be there, I'm like, oh, this could be a good way where um, I can step in or somebody else can step in and be doing the lyrics since he can't be there. It'll be good to kind of play off of that.
Yeah.
But then I ended up working with Demi Adejuibe, who was just a brilliant creator in a lot of different ways, and he really elevated it. Like he put it in the courtroom, and
Yeah.
and it kind of gave it this whole other dynamic, and then it ended up becoming like this whole other piece,
Yeah.
based on the vision that he had for it.
Yeah. Did it take you guys a while to get the lines down?
Well, it. I'll say this: Paul F. Tompkins is an amazing performer. He has not done a lot of rapping
Yeah.
in his
Okay.
life. He has not done a lot of rapping, so there was a little bit of a learning curve for him, but then he
Yeah,
eventually nailed it.
for sure. Can we expect any more music videos for any of the songs?
There's one coming out tomorrow,
Oh,
an
cool.
animated video for Death Parade. It's actually
Wow.
coming out tomorrow.
Oh, cool. And you're also doing a very different kind of promo for this album release that I saw, a live emotional processing event. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
That's yeah. Like once again, it's me trying to sit with this stuff and work it out
Yeah,
on a stage with a few people in the audience, and we're gonna live stream it out.
yeah.
Um,
How do you feel about doing, these sort of live streamed music events or comedy events?
they're kind of taxing, because as a performer, you're attempting to give a lot of energy, and it's just not a lot coming back to you.
Yeah,
And it can be difficult to kind of navigate that. So for the most part, these at home performances have not been a lot of fun. But that's kind of why I wanted to put this in a place where there's a stage, and
yeah,
even if it can't be anywhere near a full house,
yeah.
just to have any people there that I can connect to is gonna be amazing.
Have you also been doing, socially distanced comedy shows or live stream comedy shows over the lockdown?
We had to put it on hold.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because the venue we were doing it at is closed very early on, and
yeah,
doesn't we have no idea when they're going to reopen.
yeah. Are you guys hoping to bring it back when you can?
Um, I think at this point we're gonna have to discuss that because I
Yeah.
actually don't know. I don't think either of us knows where our heads are at on it now. So that's a conversation we're gonna have to have.
You're a busy man. You've also got a podcast as well, Stony Islands Audio. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you're up to at the moment with it?
So I started a podcast network called Stony Island Audio, and
Mm,
really our main mission is to allow hip hop performers to tell their own stories.
yeah.
Because a lot of really amazingly accomplished hip hop performers that just have not gotten the
Mm,
flowers that we feel they deserve. So I'm trying to create platforms for people who really love
mm,
and respect hip hop music,
mm.
and I'm trying to use my show. What had happened was as a platform to do deep dives with the careers of producers and hip hop acts who have long storied careers,
Yeah.
and I want to make sure that those stories get told.
And is it a platform that you enjoy?
Oh, I love podcasting.
Yeah.
I fell in love with podcasts like the first one I heard. I can't even remember. I think it might have been like Adam Carolla's podcast or early Mark Maron or just. I love the format. I always loved to talk radio,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
talk radio without the constant advertisements, without the commercial breaks and pitches. I
Yeah.
mean, and even though, of course, there are ads on some of these, um, it's more of what I want as a listener, which is these deep dive conversations
Yeah. Yeah.
that don't have to fit in like a 10 to 15 minute, radio break.
Yeah. Oh, very good. So, what's next then? Have you been working on any music in lockdown?
Yeah, I actually just started.
Mm,
And this doesn't have an aim necessarily just yet, but I'm
mm,
kind of working off of a feeling,
mm.
and I'm looking forward to having some mental space to refine that and
Yeah.
and turn it into something good.